will be unpacking ANCA vasculitis treatments, including should you use oral cyclophosphamide or IV cyclophosphamide? What about the difference between Rituximab and cyclophosphamide? And the golden controversial question, when do you use plasma exchange for ANCA vasculitis? All of that coming up in today's video. Hello Dr. Humans, my name is Christine Barker. I'm a nephrologist and a medical educator based in Melbourne, Australia. And today I'm going to take you through the treatment of ANCA vasculitis for your exams and for doctor life. Now, we're going to be focusing in on the treatment today, mainly. There'll be a few other pearls sprinkled in there. But if you do need a deep dive on this, I just wanted to make you aware that we do have a 1-hour ANCA Vasculitis Masterclass over on our website inside the Renal for the Written program. You can check out using the link below. But today we're going to focus in on the treatments because ANCA vasculitis is something that does come up in your physician's exams, and I feel like every doctor on planet Earth should really know about ANCA vasculitis because even though it's rare, it is life-threatening and it is organ-threatening. So it's just something that we should all have an ability to pick up, diagnose, and pass on to the right specialty if that's not your specialty. So it does come up in exams for that reason, but also it does have an evidence base. There's trials and all the things, so even more reason for you to get an MCQ about this. But in saying that, I don't think it's easy to read about ANCA vasculitis, and when it comes to clinical trials and things, they all just sort of fall out of my head. You just need to give me the salient points, okay? That's what I'm going to retain, that's what I'm going to move forward with. So today I'm going to give you the salient points so you can answer those exam questions and just have a lot more confidence in your clinical practice. I guess the first thing, before we go into the treatments, the first thing we need to do is make sure we know it's ANCA vasculitis, right? We need a diagnosis. ANCA vasculitis is a small vessel vasculitis and it can affect lots of different tissues. So of course, my favourite organ, the kidney, is quite commonly affected, as are the lungs, but it can also have ENT presentations, it can give you skin manifestations, it can affect your peripheral nerves, all of those things. So it has a wide variety of ways that it can present. You might be aware that you can send off ANCA vasculitis testing of the blood. 90% of people who have ANCA vasculitis will have positive blood tests, but 10% of them won't. I'm talking even like your organs are failing, 10% of those people don't have an ANCA that we can detect in their bloodstream. So how annoying. So of course, tissue diagnosis is going to be key here. Other organs, like from the ENT system, from the lung, you could do biopsies there. They have a bit more of a varied presentation and it's a little bit more difficult to yield a diagnosis from those tissues. Not impossible, and they have their features. But I think if it's going to come up in your exam, it's going to be in my organ, which is the highest yield of telling you that it's ANCA on a biopsy. So I want you to remember the biopsy buzzword, that is pauci-immune, crescentic, necrotizing glomerulonephritis. Now the key thing here is the pauci-immune bit. So I'm going to explain to you what this means. So for those of you who've met me before, you'll know that I love to talk about the glomerulus like a pretzel. So we're going to take this pretzel and I'm going to show you what this looks like in ANCA vasculitis. When you have ANCA vasculitis, this explodes, right? There's like a pretzel explosion and there's all these little holes because there's damage, there's vasculitis to that blood vessel. And remember, like a glomerulus is just a specialized little blood vessel, right? So now this glomerulus has holes in it from the ANCA vasculitis, very destructive. So around this pretzel is Bowman's capsule. And when it starts to see that there's like a war zone happening here in the glomerulus, Bowman's capsule's like, what is going on? And so what it does is it proliferates in to create a wall around this disaster area, and that is called a crescent. So there's this little crescent around, and then there's a glomerulus that has exploded, so that doesn't look very well. So that's crescentic GN, and that can happen in lots of different things. But the reason that you know that it's ANCA is because when you put stains on it to look for antibodies, nothing flags up. So for example, if you were to do this same thing with lupus and you put the stains on, you're gonna get a Christmas tree of staining, right? It's gonna light up all of the things. It's gonna be full house staining, all of the little antibodies, complements, all the things, they're all gonna light up when you put the immunostains on. that is lupus, that's an antibody sticking to the glomerulus type disease, right? ANCA vasculitis is different. It's to do with neutrophils exploding inside the circulation. So the antibodies are against the neutrophil, not against the glomerulus, right? So when we do staining in this situation, you'll have the crescentic GN, but you'll stain it and nothing happens, right? Pauci-immune, because it's not about an antibody being stuck there. And this is pathognomic, is that how you pronounce that word, of ANCA vasculitis, right? Pauci-immune, antibodies are not be sticking to the biopsy, crescentic GN. The glomerulus exploded because something bad's happening in there, okay? So I want you to remember that because that's how you're going to know that you're dealing with ANCA vasculitis. That is the diagnosis sorted. Now we're going to move on to the treatment. Now, ANCA vasculitis, we tend to talk about it in terms of induction and maintenance. So we want to induce remission and maintain remission of this disease. And we do that fairly aggressively because ANCA is such an organ and life-threatening condition, or certainly the cases that I see when it's affecting my favourite organ. You do get sort of more minor ANCAs that I never see. Maybe the rheumatologists see them, maybe the ENT peeps see them, I never see them. But if you have a really mild case, you might get away with something like mycophenolate, something like that, a little bit of steroid, something like but that is not what we're talking about today. We're talking about the organ-threatening one that is typical in your exams and in my clinical practice. So we're going to go quite hard. We're going to use the heavy stuff. Now, everyone who has ANCA vasculitis, we're going to use steroids straight up. We're going to use a lot of steroids. So we usually pulse them anywhere between 1 gram and 3 grams. Going to do that over 3 days or so. But typically it will be something like 1 gram daily for 3 days. That's like a typical pulse. Then we switch them on to oral steroids, and obviously we're starting off a little bit higher and then we taper down. And if you need to know, if you need to know that dose, I would just Google Pexivas, ANCA vasculitis, glucocorticoid tapering. That's going to bring you up with a beautiful table. It's also inside the KDIGO guidelines. Just look at that table and follow that table. So everyone needs the steroids. Then what we do is we decide, should we give them cyclophosphamide? Should we give them rituximab? Cyclophosphamide is the tried and tested one. This is the one we use in the most severe cases. This is the one that we have the most experience with. But there's 2 different types of cyclophosphamide. There's oral cyclophosphamide and there's IV cyclophosphamide. So which do you reach for in ANCA vasculitis? So this was explored inside a big clinical trial called the Cyclops study. So there was the study itself and then the follow-up period after that. So basically they compared the oral regimen versus the IV regimen. And what they found was that no matter what regimen you used, both of those could get someone with ANCA vasculitis into remission really, really well. So there was no difference in the speediness of this, the time to remission, or the number of patients who got into remission. So both can put your patient into remission. What they found in the longer term though was that the oral cyclophosphamide was associated with less relapses. There was a higher cumulative dose in that group and less people tended to relapse over time. And there was slightly more leukopenia in that group as well, so more toxicity. But despite the fact that the oral cyclophosphamide had less relapses, when they looked at the overall outcomes in the longer term in terms of end-stage renal failure or mortality, there was no difference. So even if you had a few relapses along the way, at the end up, there wasn't a lot of difference in terms of those big major outcomes. So what that means is that when it comes to the decision to use IV cyclophosphamide or oral cyclophosphamide, we're really just thinking about logistics, in terms of at the hospital you work at, is there easy access to an infusion centre? Is the patient adherent? Are you worried about that? What about their cumulative cyclophosphamide exposure? Have they had cyclophosphamide before? If that's the case, you might want to go with IV because it's associated with a lower cumulative dose. And what about their white cells? IV, less risk of leukopenia than the oral. So logistics and patient factors really come in here. if you're going to go and use cyclophosphamide. But cyclophosphamide is not our only option, and today we also have Rituximab, which is an anti-B cell therapy. Now, Rituximab also has some clinical trials that we can call upon which compared Rituximab to cyclophosphamide. I'm also very hot. I'm very warm. I'm just melting. Can you see me melting? So, in terms of Rituximab versus cyclophosphamide, which should we reach for? So, there were these studies, two major studies. There was the RITUXVAS and the RAVE trial. Both of these were published at the same time in the New England Journal of Medicine. So, first of all, the RITUXVAS trial, GPA or MPA vasculitis, and they had to have a renal involvement. So, it was your organ-threatening disease. All of them received steroids, and then they were randomized into the cyclophosphamide group and the Rituximab group. But the Rituximab group also got a little bit of cyclophosphamide. So they got 2 doses of cyclophosphamide, and then they went on to receive the Rituximab. And the primary endpoint was sustained remission at 12 months. And what they found was that both of them did a pretty similar job. Okay, so the 2 arms of the study did a pretty similar job. But everyone got a little bit of cyclophosphamide right at the start, okay? So it wasn't like a cyclophosphamide-free arm in the Rituximab group for this study, but both did a pretty similar job in terms of their efficacy, and in terms of adverse effects, there wasn't much difference either. And then there was the RAVE study. Not that kind of rave. There was the RAVE study, which took either new or relapsing ANCA vasculitis. Again, everyone received steroids, and then they randomized them to purely Rituximab or purely cyclophosphamide. And they also gave placebo of whichever one they didn't get. So if you got Rituximab, they gave you a placebo of oral cyclophosphamide. And if you were in the cyclophosphamide group, you got a placebo of Rituximab. And again, both groups did a very similar job. But what I would say about this study is that it wasn't the most severe of ANCA vasculitis. This trial wasn't including people who had, the most organ-threatening, on the ventilator, on the dialysis. That wasn't what this trial was all about. So, Rituximab did a pretty good job on its own, but it wasn't the most severe of severe. So, for the induction of ANCA vasculitis, you give everyone the steroids, and then you can choose between cyclophosphamide or Rituximab. But if someone has very severe organ-threatening disease, typically we'll go towards cyclophosphamide because we have the most experience with it, and it has the most evidence base in those really, really severe cases. We know it works, we know it does the job, and so we'll reach for that in the most severe ANCA vasculitis. I guess in terms of the decision making around that, you might be considering the patient's previous exposure to cyclophosphamide and cumulative toxicities. You might be thinking about their fertility, maybe their frailty, all of those things. So typically the most severe cases will get a little bit of cyclophosphamide at the start. We might convert them onto Rituximab. The milder, more moderate cases could go straight onto Rituximab. So a little bit of clinical acumen required there in terms of what you end up doing with the patient. Now, the last question here that we had for our YouTube video today was, when do you use plasma exchange in this population? Now, plasma exchange is a treatment where we literally take the patient's plasma. We use a similar process to dialysis where we take their blood out and then we separate their blood into plasma and non-plasma, all the cells, and we literally just take their plasma and dump it. We get rid of it from their body. We remove their plasma volume. It's a very extreme thing to do to someone. And in doing that, we'll remove their antibodies, every antibody in their circulation. We'll also remove clotting factors, complement factors, all of that stuff. So we're removing all the things in the plasma. So we do that, and then we give them usually a little bit of low-dose IVIG to replace some of their immunity, and we use albumin or FFP as replacement fluid depending on their bleeding risk. Like if they just had a biopsy or if they've got alveolar hemorrhage or something like that, you might use a bit of FFP as well. So that's what plasma exchange is, and this is sometimes used in ANCA vasculitis, but it's a little bit controversial. In terms of the evidence base for this, there were some major trials done along the way and meta-analyses and all the things. The sum up of that is basically The evidence that currently exists says that plasma exchange is only helpful, only beneficial to people who are at risk of end-stage renal failure within the next 12 months. So the KDIGO guidelines will say only to plasma exchange people with high creatinines. The number they give in the 2024 guidelines is greater than 300 millimoles per litre or greater than 3.4 milligrams per deciliter if your units are different from ours. So that would be the criteria. Someone with that type of creatinine is at risk of end-stage renal failure, or if they just have a rapidly rising creatinine, even if it's not reached that yet. And of course, if they're dialysis dependent, it's a no-brainer. So those are the people that benefit most from the plasma exchange. Plasma exchange is associated with reduced risk of end-stage renal failure when used in that group of people. And I should say the other reason for plasma exchange in this group is if you have a combined ANCA plus something like anti-GBM, sometimes there's overlap disease. Everyone with that would get plasma exchange. You've got to get rid of that anti-GBM. It's an absolute nightmare. But you do get this overlap disease. So just to make you aware of that, that is another reason for plasma exchange. In terms of alveolar hemorrhage, the way the trials were designed, this remains unclear. Our current KDIGO guidelines would still recommend if someone has severe alveolar hemorrhage to consider plasma exchange. So I think many nephrologists would do that if they had a patient with that issue. Now, some of you might be wondering about the steroids. I said to you that everyone gets glucocorticoids and we go hard. We pulse them with IV methylpred and then we put them onto the oral stuff. And that is true, but there is a steroid-sparing medication during this induction phase, and that's called Avacopan. So Avacopan is a C5a receptor antagonist, and what that basically means is that on neutrophils there's a little C5a receptor, and C5a is part of complement and it's a chemoattractant. So the C5a would be there because of complement being activated, and then it would come to the neutrophil and it would bind to the neutrophil and then bring in other aspects of the immune response. So Avacopan blocks this receptor on neutrophils and reduces the inflammation in ANCA vasculitis. That's the idea. In the trials, it's not like the patients were completely steroid free. They got their induction steroids, but they were tapered quicker. So the way that I read the evidence is that Avacopan would be used to steroid spare. So it helps to reduce the steroids that are needed in that induction phase and has been shown to be very effective in that regard. Now, in terms of once you get someone into remission, the idea is maintenance of remission. And I won't go into all the trials and all the things, but basically there are a couple of options for this. Azathioprine was the go-to previously, alongside low-dose prednisolone. But nowadays, Rituximab is thought to be superior to azathioprine. So you can still use either, but more and more we're reaching for the Rituximab to keep people in remission in that longer term. And we tend to give maintenance immunosuppression. Our guidelines recommend anywhere between 2 years to 4 years, so 24 to 48 months, depending on the individual that you're caring for. The only caveat to that would be if you had someone who had ANCA vasculitis due to, say, a drug reaction, so some of the thyroid medications, hydralazine, or you can have this with cocaine that's got certain additives in it. I think it's called levamisole. You can get ANCA vasculitis that's pretty nasty. If the ANCA vasculitis was purely driven by a drug, then you would still have to induce them pretty aggressively to switch off the ANCA vasculitis, but you might not have to do like 2 or 4 years of maintenance immunosuppression. If you've taken that drug away, you might get away without that. Obviously, that would be assessed on a case-by-case basis. So that was the treatment of ANCA vasculitis in a nutshell. You may wish to look at these videos, and don't forget we have so much waiting for you inside the Renal for the Written program. If you need that in your life, you can catch that on our website. It'll give you everything you need to know on ANCA vasculitis and so much more. Everything you need to know about the kidney. Probably, basically, ever. Okay, so go and check that out. And otherwise, I will see you again soon for some more high yield learning. Bye!